Today I am reading from the 11th book in the Left Behind series. The name of the book is Armageddon, and I'm going to be reading chapter 11 today. I liked Albie a lot, Zeke said, as Mac piloted them across the Atlantic. He was a good man. You got that right, Z, Mac said. And for the life of me, I can't understand it, but I'm afraid he did something royally foolish to get himself killed. Doesn't sound like him. You and Captain Steele and everybody used to listen to his ideas all the time. But everybody's human. Let your guard down for a second. Get overconfident. Who knows? He was determined to see this lowlife he used to know. And even when he and I agreed I should go on to Petra and fly Rayford back to the States, Albie still wanted to go through with this little mission. It's just as much my fault. Both of us thought it was something that had to get done and fast. Now look where we are. Rayford and Tyson and Shane are taking it hard. We all are. As much as we've got through it, it never gets easier. They're planning a little service for Albie at Petra once everybody gets there from San Diego. When will that be? Oh, first wave ought to be arriving around 3 in the morning tomorrow. You and I got about 13 hours jump on them. Once I drop you off, I got to get to Albasra and clear out Albie's and my apartment. Make sure we didn't leave any clues for anybody. I'll be taking a bigger plane from Petra because I got to bring back this Otto West guy and his people. Captain Steele told me about him. So you're bringing them back to Petra because of that scripture about God's people getting out of Babylon before God destroys it? Exactly. Z sat staring at the ocean 7.5 miles below. What must that have looked like when it was all blood? You can't imagine. Hey, Mac, you think Rayford ought to be trusting Carpathia's secretary? The way he tells the story, I guess. You don't think so? I don't trust anybody who isn't a believer. What if she has second thoughts, sets a trap, gets you and this Otto ambushed? A pleasant thought. You said yourself you can't be too careful. Well, Max said we've got to know what's happening in Alhela and as much as possible what's coming after that, and we don't know how else to do it. An hour later, Zeke dug through one of his bags and brought out a book. He looked self-conscious, something I wouldn't even have been able to read when you knew me in Chicago. I was going to say, but now that I'm reading better, I think I can do more things, scientifically, such as, I'm guessing you guys are asking me to come up with new looks and identities for a bunch of people. Right. All our old aliases and appearances have been compromised. Found this book in an abandoned library just across the Minnesota border. There's all kinds of stuff in here I never even heard of before. New ways to change skin and eye color and all that. Fake scars and blemishes. How many people are we talking about? I think just 5, Max said. I think Ray wants get ups for him and Buck and Sebastian and Smitty and me. Really? That's it? I brought way too much stuff. What did you bring? Everything I had left over from Chicago. GC uniforms at all levels, IDs, documents, stuff for women and men. This is going to be easy. I mean, it'll take time, but I was afraid you'd need 10 or 12. The hardest one is going to be Mr. Sebastian, but I've already got an idea for him. Tell me. Zeke put his book down, apparently so he could gesture with both hands. The problem with your big people is that no matter what you do with them, you can't make them smaller. You can make a small person big with padding and whatnot, but you can't take pounds off the big ones. But what I can do, see, is give George a whole new look, the look of an older man. So his size doesn't look so threatening. It looks like it came on him from getting old rather than from working out a military training. Might even give him a cane and glasses. Make him look like one of those old middle-aged guys who have gone to seed. Chop off that blonde hair, give him a rim of white, put some lines in his face. All of a sudden, instead of being a guy in his late 20s in perfect shape and huge, he's 30 years old, older, slowed down by food, maybe diabetes, bad knees, bad feet, stooped a little. Add some padding around his middle, front and back, so he waddles. He's not going to threaten anybody. Brilliant. What do you do with me? Biggest giveaway with you is your southern accent. Can you fake others? Can you be a Yank or a Brit? A Brit easier than a Yankee, that's for sure. If you can be British, I can make you look that way. Tweeds and all. Chloe's guess about where she was headed was confirmed when Jock radioed ahead, and the SUV was met by a flanks of GC motorcycles and squad cars. They escorted the celebrated prisoner to the grounds of what had once been known as Statesville Correctional Center in Joliet, Illinois. The place was a Gothic house of horror that had been converted from a state penitentiary to one of GC's largest international prisons. It had both male and female prisoners. In fact, the female population was second largest only to the Belgium facility for female rehabilitation. The first thing to hit Chloe was the crowd of media, trucks jamming the entrance, cameras pointing toward the SUV with every conceivable perch. And once the vehicle had passed, she looked back to see the crew scrambling for position in the vast courtyard. The yard had become legendary at Statesville during the last 2.5 years. Prisoners were allowed there for only 2 reasons. They were herded past a gigantic bronze statue of Carpathia 3 times a day, where they were stopped in groups of 30 to 50 and allowed to kneel and worship, or they were in the yard to be executed. The yard had 7 guillotines about 30 feet apart and positioned so that the sun baked them from dawn to dusk. Jock stopped the SUV just inside the yard. "Look at 'em there, sweetie," he said. "Those blades get sharpened every night, but not a one of 'em's ever been cleaned. No scraping, no washing, no rust inhibitors. And you know those slots on each side where the big blades slide down? Back when we were more humane, those were lubricated every time they were used. No more. Now the blades scrape along the sides, sometimes get hung up, get crooked, slow down. I mean, they still weigh down enough, even on a bad day. By the time they reach your neck, they're going to dig in at least 3 inches. In the old days, a blade didn't do its job. Too bad for us. The sentence was to stick your head in there until the blade dropped. If it somehow didn't kill you, well, you had taken your punishment. And don't think that didn't happen more than once. Lots of people walking around with severe neck wounds. But now, blade doesn't kill you. We just hoist her again and let her go. 2, 3 times with a rusty, blood-caked blade that, like I said, is sharpened every night. That'll do the trick." About 20 feet before each guillotine stood a rickety wood table, also gray and weathered by the sun and wind. Each had 2 incongruous Bank of England chairs behind it, burnished redwood significantly less wind-worn. "Processors and mark applicators get to sit," Jock said. "The condemned stand in line. Once their information is recorded and any personal belongings have been confiscated, they're issued a plastic laundry basket they hand to the executioner. He or she sits it on the other side of where the blade comes down. Head drops in the basket, body stays where it knelt. Lifers without parole do collection duty. Come on, I'll show you. Spare me." "Oh, you'd like that, wouldn't you?" Jock got out. "Cuff her, Jess," he said. Jess turned and opened the cage. "Hands," he said. "Better dope me again," Chloe said. "Say what? You think I'm going to voluntarily be cuffed so you guys can take me somewhere I don't want to go?" Jock opened the back door. "Hold on, Jock," Jessie hollered. "She's not cuffed yet." "What the?" Jock seeming to Chloe to show off the cameras, leaped into the back seat. Chloe sat with her fists balled under her thighs. You like to be difficult, don't you? He said. Jock grabbed her wrist and jerked her hands up and together where Jessie could reach them. As soon as she was cuffed, Jock slid back out of the car, pulling her by the cuffs and letting his body weight drag her out. She came out hands first, head banging the door, knees scraping the floor, and then the ground. Jock pulled her to her feet. Chloe hurt all over, but she was glad she had made them work. Someone else could go gently into that good night of death, not her. Jock clamped a hand around her elbow and led her to the middle death machine. This is going to be yours tomorrow if you don't cooperate today. The stench overwhelmed her, and both men covered their mouths and noses with handkerchiefs. Chloe, mercifully cuffed in front this time, bent her elbows and held her nose closed with her fingers. As you can see, Jock said, we don't wash the platforms or the ground either. I mean, who would that benefit? The area around the middle machine, like the others along the 60-yard row, looked to Chloe like a slaughterhouse. The ground around it was black, caked with blood. See that dumpster back there? Directly behind the middle machine, maybe 100 feet back, sat a dumpster that looked half the size of a boxcar. It had no lid. One collector takes the basket and dumps the head in there. Two collectors drag the body to the same place. See those black trails from each station to the dumpster? You know what that is. Chloe knew all right. She tried to hold her breath, but Jock kept pulling her arm so her hands came away from her nose. She prayed he would not take her out and make her look in the dumpster. It gets emptied about once a week. The GC held the media back, but they yelled questions. What's that on her jumpsuit? Did she soil herself? Chloe, mortified, hollered, chocolate. Jock whirled and batted her in the forehead with the back of his hand. You say nothing to anyone but us, understand? They drugged me with a chalk. Jock slipped around behind her and clamped his hand around her mouth. When she tried to bite him, he drove a knee into her lower back, knocking the wind from her. Give me the tape, Jess. It didn't have to come to this, ma'am, Jess said, pulling a 3-inch roll of duct tape from his jacket pocket. I was hoping we wouldn't have to. Jock reached to pull a length of tape off the roll, freeing Chloe's mouth. Tell the truth for once. I was drugged. Jock pressed the tape under her nose so tight her upper lip bulged. And when he pressed the sides against her cheeks, she couldn't move her jaw, let alone speak. God, Chloe prayed silently, help me be strong. I don't want to go easy. I don't want to be beat or scared into submission. And if they kill me, let me speak first. Remind me of all the verses I've memorized, please, God. Let me speak your words. Jock and Jazzy took her back across the yard toward a steel door in the wall of one of the cell blocks. The door was at ground level, but she assumed stairs would lead below the ground to solitary confinement. They stopped about 10 yards from the door, and the media was about the same distance away on the other side. Has she spilled any more? A woman called out. Oh, yes, Jock said. Chloe vigorously shook her head. More all the time, he continued. Of course, we had to tell her there would be no trading leniency for physical favors, as it were. She can only help herself by telling the truth. I'm confident we'll get there. We've already gained more knowledge about the Judite underground and the illegal black market co-op from her than from any other source we've ever had. And as you know, she gave up Mr. al-Basra, the leading subversive in the Middle East, and he is already dead. Chloe continued to shake her head, but she had no illusions that would be shown on GCNN that evening. That's all for now, folks. We have a few more prerequisites for Mrs. Williams to qualify for a life sentence rather than death, but our daily executions here will be held tomorrow at 10 a.m. regardless. We do not foresee having the full house they did yesterday, with every machine busy for nearly half an hour, but the latest count is 35 on the docket, so 5 for each machine. The press began to disperse, but still Jock and Jessie stood there with Chloe. I'm going to finish my tour guide speech, little lady, and you're going to hear me out, Jock said. Some of the best days of my life have been spent in this yard, seeing people get what's coming to them. Frankly, I was disappointed when I was transferred to San Diego, but the brass assured me a huge Judite cell was suspected there. They told me I could cart them back here if we rooted them out. Here's hoping you're just the first. Mac was glad to have Zeke for company on the long flight. Though uneducated, the young man was smart and inquisitive. He never ran out of questions or things to talk about. Abdullah's kind of tough because he's already so ethnic. He's not good with accents, so I've got to keep him Middle Eastern, but obviously something different from Jordanian. Rayford's pretty easy because I can go any direction with him. Buck's the hardest with all the facial scars. But anyway, let's say I make you five guys into totally different people. What are you going to do? I'm not totally sure myself, Z, Max said. Rumor has it Carpathia is calling in the 10 Kings. Of course, he calls them regional potentates, but we know what's going down, don't we? I do. If Otto succeeds in New Babylon, we find out where the big shindig is going to be before it happens, and we get in there and bug the place. We're not going to try to stop prophesied events, of course, but it'll be good to know exactly what's happening. What happens to Carpathia's secretary? Crystal? If I had a vote, I'd say we convince her we know what's going to happen to New Babylon and get her out of there. To Petra? Max shook his head. Much as we might like to do that, God has set that city aside as a city of refuge for his people only. Sad as it is, she made her decision, took her stand, and accepted the mark. Getting her out of New Babylon is a mess when God finally judges the city. She's going to die anyway, sometimes between then and the glorious appearing. And when she does, she's not going to like what eternal life looks like. That doesn't mean we can't befriend her and be grateful for her help, or that we can't feel sorry that she waited too long to see the truth. I still wonder if we can trust her, though, Zeke said. The San Diego evacuation deadline was moved up to midnight, partly because preparations were ahead of schedule and partly to be safe. No one knew for sure when the GC would begin their next round of canvassing. Buck was in the vehicle bay on the walkie-talkie with Ming, who was in his apartment watching Kenny and also manning the periscope. When she said the coast was clear, Buck sent loaded vehicles to the airstrip, where planes and pilots arranged by Lionel Whalen met them. At 6 p.m., Ming radioed, Buck, Chloe's on TV. Kenny watching? I'll get him into his room. Buck sprinted back, and by the time he got to his quarters, Rayford had shown up too. The news showed Chloe trying to communicate to the press, and Jock backhanding her. Buck felt murderous, especially when they taped her mouth shut. He was used to the lies, but he couldn't stand to see her mistreated. Where's that look like you, Ray? He said. Rayford shook his head, studying it. One of the women reporters said, here in Louisiana, prisons are notoriously hard, and none harder than Angola. International terrorist Chloe Williams will rue the day she pushed the global community to the point where she was sent here. The guillotine will be sweet relief compared to hard labor for the rest of her life. Angola, Louisiana, Buck said. That's where I'm going. I want to take Sebastian and Razor, and you'll want to come, of course, Dad. Who else do you think we should... Hold on, Buck, Rayford said. We're not going to Louisiana. What? You send 3 of your top people to Greece to get George, and you're going to let GC do what they want with Chloe? No way she's in Louisiana. You just heard it. Think, Buck. They want us to believe she's in Louisiana. They moved her from San Diego to keep away from a raid. They wouldn't be announcing where they took her. Buck knew Rayford was right. She's out of prison, though, isn't she? They're not faking that. I wouldn't put anything past them. Ray, I can't fly to Petra and leave her here. If I stay somewhere closer to back east, At least I'd have a chance to. But how are we going to find out where she is? I'd never forgive myself if I jetted off to safety and left her to die alone. I don't know how you could either. I'm not about to, if you must know. Come on, Dad, we're in this thing together. Don't be holding out on me. I've got to call into Crystal to see if she's heard anything. Problem is, it's 4 in the morning over there, and she doesn't think anybody has a clue anyway. The people who would know are in Alhilla, and we have no access to them. It's going to look pretty suspicious if Crystal starts asking them about Chloe. It was the middle of the evening in Illinois, and Chloe was surprised to have been left alone for hours. She had been right about solitary. The stairs led below ground, and she had been ushered into a small cell with no cot, no sink, no toilet, no chair, no bench, no nothing, including no light or window. The duct tape had been removed from her mouth, and when the solid metal door was shut, she was in pitch darkness. A small square hole in the door opened and was filled with Jock's face. I'm going to let you get some rest, he said, and I'm going to get some too. Think about anything you could tell me that will benefit you, because when I come back, we're going to see if we need to give you an ejection to help you open up. Your little shenanigans today brought you this. You're not going to like it in there if you're claustrophobic or afraid of the dark. Chloe was both, but she was not about to admit it. She feared she would panic or go mad, but as she heard Jock's footsteps retreat, she was overcome with a sense of peace. Thank you, Lord, she said. I need you. I'm willing to die, but I don't want to shame you. I need you to override the truth serum. Don't let me give away anything or anybody, and keep me strong so I won't worry so much about myself. Help me keep my mind, my focus, and my priorities, and be with Kenny and Buck and Dad. Just thinking about them brought a sob to her throat. Chloe pressed her back against the wall and lowered herself to the cold floor. God, please bring to mind scriptures you want me to hear right now. Don't let hunger or fatigue or fear keep me from remembering. You know who I am and who I am not. I just want to be what you want me to be. You know better than I that you're working with imperfection here. She lay on her side with no heart palpitations from the closed-in space or the darkness. That alone was evidence that God was hearing her. She began rehearsing in her mind her memory verses, starting as far back in the Bible as she could remember. But when she stalled, she panicked. Lord, keep my mind fresh. Don't let me forget. I want to be quoting you when I see you. Her mind became a jumble. How will I remember? What if my mind goes blank? Lord, please. And suddenly, light. Was she dreaming? She blinked. The rusted, filthy chamber was bright enough to make her shield her eyes. A vision? A dream? A hallucination? Then a voice, quoting her favorite verses. She repeated them word for word. Is this your answer, God? You'll speak them and I'll repeat them? Thank you, thank you. Loud banging on the door. Keep it down in there. Yes, peace, be still. That voice came from the corner. Chloe pulled her hands from her eyes and jumped at a figure sitting, a finger to his lips. Is it you, Lord? She said, breathless. No one can see God and live, he whispered. Then who are you? He sent me. Praise God. Yes, please. Can anyone else see you? Tomorrow, not until then. You'll remind me of what God has promised? I will. You make me want to sing? Do so. Sing with me. I am not here to sing, but to speak. You sing. Chloe began singing. When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, and what a glory he sheds on our way. While we do this good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey. Shut up in there. Chloe sang louder. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. If I have to open this door, you're going to wish I hadn't. Then, in fellowship sweet, we shall sit at his feet. That brought knocking. It sounded like with a stick, and Chloe laughed out loud. They don't like my voice, she told her new friend. Or the words, he said, and she laughed all the more. You going crazy in there? No. Do you have any requests? Only that you knock it off. Sorry. And she began again. Standing on the promises of Christ my King, through eternal ages let his praises ring. Glory in the highest I will shout and sing, standing on the promises of God. All right, the small door flew open. The room went dark again. You got a light in there? Sure, the light of God. I'm serious. What have you got in there? Just the light of his presence. If Jock gets back and finds you with something in there, you'll regret it. Regret the chance to surprise him? I don't think so. Do you know how to sing harmony? Sing with me. Standing on the promises that cannot fail. The guard slammed the door. And that is the end of chapter 11. Next, we'll be reading chapter 12. Thank you for joining me and have a wonderful day.